The quest is over. Alexander Ovechkin is the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer, passing Wayne Gretzky. How does this affect the Washington Capitals going forward? We've got that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, history was made on Sunday. Alexander Ovechkin passing Wayne Gretzky to be the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer. Talk to me about that moment.
Beyond excited. I mean, as you can imagine, this is something that has been spoke about for years now. And it's interesting how everything has changed just this past offseason. We're talking about if he could do it under this current contract. So for him to finally get it out of the way, it's a big thing for him. It'll be interesting to see how he plays going forward. The only down part of it, I guess, is that he didn't get to do it at home at Cap One Arena. But ultimately, beyond excited, elated for Alex Ovechkin and the team in general.
I really have to say, I like the way the NHL and the Capitals handled this moment. The game stopped. Gretzky showed class. Gary Bettman showed class. Ovechkin showed class. I just think the NHL handled this moment very, very well.
I think so as well. You know, there was part of me that was concerned about, well, are they going to let them actually celebrate? I know it had been determined here for some time, but to your point there, I think that they handled the pre-planning well and, you know, gave him his moment because there's not a lot of these moments. You know, I think a lot of people that are watching or listening to the show maybe weren't alive when Gretzky got his record so many years ago. And he's held on to that for so many years. That's one of the things I talk about is that we're seeing this in real time. That's what's cool to me. When we look at Gretzky, it's some old grainy archival footage that this should be crystal clear. And like a lot of major life events for me, I'll never forget where I was when I found out it happened.
I mean, Gretzky's record stood for 31 years. That's
crazy.
A lifetime for a lot of people as of right now. You wonder how long Alex Ovechkin will hold on to this record, but what does setting this record, the all-time goals record, say about Alexander Ovechkin?
Well, what it says to me is it's about tenacity and his will to win. You take a look at what he did last season. There was a lot of people that were skeptical. They were hard on him, that despite all that he's accomplished, that he had a rough start to his season. And already the insiders were saying that he was fat, that he was washed, that Father Time is undefeated and all these other things. And you take a look at him. He did get off to that slow start last season. 9 goals at the All-Star break. Went to Dubai, rode around on a camel, came back, and finished the season with 31 goals, which, to be fair here, was a bit of dip in production, what he's used to doing. But all things considered, he found a way to dig deep and get it done. Where we really saw it pay off was this past summer. He spoke about that he's 39 years old, or he was 39 years old in camp there, that he doesn't train the same way that he did when he was 27 years old. I'm 48 years old myself here. And one of the things that I find in life is sometimes the mind is willing, but the body is weak. I'll go out and play softball or something like that with my kids. So I think that Alex Ovechkin realize that, you know, you have to take a different tactic, that, like I say, you don't train the same way that you do when you're 27 years old. So he put the work in over the summer, came out a man on a mission, and has played lights out all season. So that's the big thing. And then you take a look at what he did at the All-Star break this season. He didn't get crazy and go overseas or do anything like that. He went to Miami. He trained really hard because he knew what was at stake. He knows that he is under contract this season, the following season, and then after that, it's a bit murky. So I think he wanted to make hay while the sun shines, as they say, catch and pass Gretzky, and maybe do something unthinkable and win a Stanley Cup, something that was unthinkable this past offseason.
No doubt about that. Where Does this put Alex Ovechkin in the pantheon of all-time great hockey players?
For me, of course, I'm a bit of a homer. I'm drinking the Capitals Kool-Aid. I think that he's the greatest. There are certain metrics that would say that Gretzky is better still in certain aspects, but being the greatest goal scorer, and we could go into the weeds a little bit talking about era adjusted goals and all of those kind of things. That Alex Ovechkin in a lot of ways is a better netminder or a better goal scorer, because you take a look at the netminders of old. I'm talking Gretzky era. There wasn't the real butterfly style a whole lot back then. It was just a shot on net, and they kind of just flailed at the puck. And, and then you take a look at Ovechkin. He's getting it done where the netminders are taller. Their pads are bigger, all of these kind of things. My detractors would say that when Gretzky was playing, they were playing with primarily wood sticks. So you take a look at it for me, if you're factoring in the era adjusted aspect of it, for me, he is the greatest goal scorer for one. But for me, as a Capitals fan, he is the greatest NHL player ever.
What does this mean emotionally for the Washington Capitals? I mean, they've been trying to downplay it to whatever extent, but there's obviously been a focus here of get Ovi the record. Their playoff spot is more or less wrapped up. How does the team respond to all of a sudden this being in their rearview mirror?
Well, there's a couple different ways of looking at it. I think that Alex Ovechkin was perhaps distracted based on this whole goal. But as far as the rest of the roster is, I think maybe it was a welcome distraction. So the spotlight wasn't shined directly on them if they were playing well, if they were playing poor. Now we got that off our back. Now it is Capitals full go. How are we going to perform after getting swept in the playoffs last year? That's the big thing. That they're in a great position, the biggest turnaround that we've ever seen, where they were the last team to qualify, now the first team to qualify. And, will only take you so far. And a little bit later, we'll talk about what that means going forward. But you take a look at the Capitals, I think that it's the pressures on them to perform. You take a look at the moves that were made this past summer. I'm talking Pierre-Luc Dubois, Logan Thompson, Chychrun, all these kind of guys. These moves that former GM Brian McClellan said were risky moves have really paid dividends. Tell me if you had that on your bingo card when you found out that Pierre-Luc Dubois was coming to the Capitals and he would be one of the biggest assets, the biggest pickups all season. Jacob Chychrun, Logan Thompson, seeing a bounce back from what he had with Vegas. So all things considered, I think that it is a good thing. And now there's not the distraction. All minds must be set on doing great things in the playoffs. It's the Stanley Cup final, or it's nothing for me.
Capitals now 5-4-1 in their last 10. Their play has been a little bit uneven. How important is it for them to finish strong and get playing better hockey before the playoffs get underway?
You take a look at it. The last time the Capitals played the Hurricanes here not long ago, Rob Brindamore said, well, what are they playing for anyway? What do they care? And subsequently, the Hurricanes mopped the floor with the Capitals. There's a lot at stake. This is a time to tune up the engine, if you will. You don't want to go on a long road trip and find 100 miles down the road that your car's not up for it. The Capitals want to find out what is wrong with the team right here, right now. And I think that this team has been operating on positive vibes. You hear a lot about different things that aren't quantifiable, like the chemistry in the locker room is really great and all those kind of things. You got to think that that's probably because the team is winning. Maybe not the case if they weren't. That the things that aren't working now, I'm talking primarily their struggles on special teams, primarily the power play in particular, that those are the things that are going to get drawn into focus. The people that are everydayers of the Locked On Capitals I have spoke about all season, that special teams are important. Especially in the latter part of the season, you can get away with having subpar PK and PP. But now when the rubber meets the road, you got to make the most of your golden opportunities, scoring goals on the power play and killing off those penalties. That those are going to be the big things for the Capitals to have success if they want to make a deep push. Because I remember last season and I was happy that they made it to the playoffs, but getting swept, that left a sour taste in my mouth. That is for sure.
How fitting was it that this record-setting goal came from his favorite spot, more or less, on the power play, on the one-timer, rather than an empty net or a weird deflection or something like that?
Not an empty netter. That's one of the things, and it means a lot to answer your question, that it was very fitting that that's where he has scored more goals than any place, was near where he normally scores all of them there, the dot at the left circle there, or the left dot there. It was big. And, there was a lot of chatter out there from a lot of hockey people trying to diminish what he has done, that, he's scored the most empty net goals and all of these kind of things. And one of the things that's been said is he told Spencer Carberry in a recent game here, he goes, no, I don't want an empty netter, so don't do it. And John Carlson and Dylan Strowman, these different kind of guys, are like, Ovi, you want the puck? He's like, no, I only want it if it's fair and square, if you will. And Gretzky, he said about it, he didn't really care, of course he doesn't care. But I think for him, it's about pride. I think he didn't want to have it feel like stolen valor, if you will. But I think it's a good thing. And I'm ultimately very happy that he didn't get an empty net goal and got it, like I say, fair and square. I wouldn't have thought anything less if he did, because you take a look at it, say there are, and there's a decent amount of empty net goals in there. He has still scored a lot of goals that weren't empty netters.
No question. No question. All right, Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find the podcast on all the big platforms, Apple, Spotify, also available on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps.
All right, Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that situation where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed Sponsored Jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need.